Who is your favorite Beatle? And this is a two-pronged question, both who is the hottest and also whose music is your favorite
Oh,
out of what you've heard.
okay. Music favorite is probably George. I think the hottest is probably Paul. But I actually, after watching this movie, would say my favorite is Ringo.
You know what? I'm going to add in personality.
I think Ringo is probably personality-wise.
I agree. So Ringo is my favorite when it comes to like him as a person, like as a vibe. My favorite music is George's music, hands down. And then honestly, I don't know about the third. Maybe George again. I couldn't choose. And if you guys want to tell us who you guys think is the hottest, you can email us at upcpod@gmail.com. Hello, welcome back to the Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast. Today on our very 60s episode, this is David as usual, joined by my co-host,
Brandon, as usual. It's 60s week here. And not only is it 60s week, it's the Beatles week. And not
That's
only
right.
is it the Beatles week, it's a Hard Day's Night week. Because we got a movie, we got an album, and it turns out they are the exact same thing. So, you know, I hope we have a lot to talk about here. Because if we have nothing to talk about for either of these, well, that's going to be a problem because they are the same thing.
Don't worry, we're going to talk a lot about how hot the Beatles are. At least how hot George and Paul are, according to us.
And hot take, I don't think Ringo has that big of a nose.
Same. I agree. He's also, like, awesome, can I just say.
I can't believe they wanted us to hate him.
Yeah, poor Ringo. I think they did that on purpose, though, because they knew everyone's going to love him.
And I think everybody's going to love hearing what David watched in the past week.
That's right, because I watched something that kind of ties back to you.
Oh.
Yes, in a way, because I remember when this movie came out, you did want to go watch it, I think. And it's a movie that you chose on our box office draft, aka I watched Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. this past
Oh,
week,
okay.
because it's on
Interesting.
streaming. Yeah. It's directed by Gore Verbinski, who did the Pirates movies. And it wasn't very good, sadly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, it kind of, to quote Jennifer, it felt like a boomer yelling at a wall for like 2 hours.
Oh, interesting.
And like the comedy wasn't good enough to make it more interesting than, you know, in your face, like iPhones are bad and AI is bad. Boo. Like that's literally what it felt like.
Interesting.
So it was kind of a letdown because I did want to like it more. There's obviously a lot of great actors in it. And there are like moments that are nice, like that are enjoyable. But a lot of it is just like, it feels very, very Deus Ex Machina in a lot of moments. It also just feels kind of lazy. And then the third act is just terrible. Like it's just really not good.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
The third act is really when it falls
specifically
apart.
the third act.
I've heard it described as a cult classic, too.
I can see that.
I think that tells me how I would feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 2.5 because like, you know, I think there are good performances in it. Like there are some nice parts about it. And like I said, there are some moments that do work, but just overall, I didn't really like it. So it is sitting at that 2.5, sadly. So not only did it bomb on your box office draft, Brandon, it also bombed in my heart. I have a question for you now, and that is, what have you been listening to this past week?
Well, before I get into that, I did want to mention, you mentioned Jennifer, so shout out Armenia real
Oh
quick.
my God. I forgot. Well, hey, I at least mentioned Jennifer first. So.
That's true.
Ha. But I did it on accident, honestly.
You quoted her. I don't know how that's an accident. So you asked me what I listened to this week. Guys, I don't even want to talk about the shit that I listened to this week. It was so bad.
Oh.
So instead, I brought a discussion topic forward for David and I.
Ooh, I like that.
Recently in Hollywood, and kind of in the world, but we're going to focus specifically on Hollywood because that's what we know about. There have been a lot of mergers. Warner and Paramount is the big one. But recently, it was announced that Fox is acquiring Roku. And then a few days later, I think it was Variety reported that Netflix was interested in buying Lionsgate. And then Netflix was like, no, guys, we're not doing that. Even though they said they were not doing a bunch of other stuff, like
Yeah.
releasing Narnia in theaters next year. So
Yeah.
I wanted to get your opinion on what all of this consolidation means for Hollywood, because the general sentiment is that this is really bad, which I agree with. But I've also heard people saying that it's actually good that Paramount and Warner specifically are merging, because it'll create a super studio, a mega conglomerate that can go up against the new Disney 20th century.
Let me put it like this. There are some deals that I don't know, like the effect of. For instance, the Netflix Roku deal, right?
Fox and Roku.
When it comes to that one, I honestly don't know what the effects of that will be, because I don't know enough about like their business models and how that might impact things. Obviously, people will be laid off. Like, we know that for sure, and that's obviously going to be bad. And that's gonna be something that's gonna happen in every single one of these situations. So no matter what, there is that negative like caveat to each of these. For the Netflix Lionsgate one, I mean, look, I obviously think that none of these should go forward. I could see this one like being a less bad scenario, in the sense that maybe Netflix will start to release more stuff in theaters through Lionsgate. But at the same time, my ultimate worry is that like Lionsgate would start making less or something. Then again, they would get that Netflix money, so maybe like they would start making more. I generally don't know. But I ultimately think that it's better that they both like are separate and Netflix just starts releasing stuff on their own. The best case scenario for the world is for Netflix to just create a distribution arm and release movies in theaters without buying another company. And then for the Paramount Warner Brothers one, that's the worst one.
Oh, yeah.
That's not good at all. There's no way that's good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any way you can possibly spin Paramount and Warner Brothers to be a good thing for Hollywood, because there's so much redundancy between the two companies as well that you're going to have to shut down vast wings of the company. Like, you're going to have to merge news organizations together. You're going to have to get rid of cable channels.
Absolutely.
HBO and Showtime suddenly are the same thing. Like, what do? You're going to own like 4 streaming services.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see any way that this makes any sense for either of them, unless they are trying to control media, essentially.
The amount of layoffs is going to be so intense. It's going to be crazy. On top of that, they're going to have such a massive amount of debt that it's going to be almost impossible to like get out of it. So they're starting off with like in such a bad situation, if it goes through, that they're not going to be able to like beat Disney at all. They're not going to be able to beat Universal, I think. And the other big thing that I think people don't understand is that Universal and Disney at this point have so many other ways of making money, like theme parks, that it's hard to compete with them if you don't have that. Both Paramount and Warner Brothers, they don't have any of that. They make TV shows and they make movies, and then obviously they have like their new stuff. But they don't have any of the other like avenues of revenue that Disney and Universal have. So like theoretically, if they wanted to actually compete, the merger would have to be like Universal and Warner Brothers or Universal and Paramount, so they could get those studios or something, you know, like they're not going to be able to compete, I don't think, even if they are successful. Especially with like the claim that they're going to release 30 movies a year, 15 each. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they're obviously not going to be competing with themselves in theaters. Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Right. There's only so many dates on the calendar.
If I could choose a best case scenario, they would all stay separate, and then 20th Century would be spun off from Disney into its own company. Like, it should not exist as part of Disney.
And David Ellison would be fired into the sun.
That is honestly the best case scenario for where we are right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do not support any of these mergers in any way whatsoever, because even if we are all wrong and they ended up being good, there's still thousands of people that are going to get laid off no matter what.
Exactly. And I think that that's the big part that a lot of people don't understand, because Hollywood is already like faltering. Like, we all are already not making enough stuff in LA. And then just in general, seasons are getting shorter. Writers' rooms are getting smaller. Everything's becoming more fragmented and fractured. And then you lose a couple thousand employees, and now you got more people who are unemployed. in Hollywood who know how to do all this stuff, more people fighting for the same jobs. Like, I just don't see a good end to this.
Another thing that happens is those people that lose their jobs, they move into positions lower than the ones that they were working at because they obviously need work. And that pushes out, like, that pushes the chain down. So then young people that are just starting their careers have no way in because other people with more experience are getting those jobs, which obviously you want those other people to have jobs. But, you know, if our generation does not have a way in, you are setting up things for the future to fail.
And I find it interesting as well that there are so many new movies that are made by younger directors, younger creative people. And I already know that we're going to learn the wrong lessons from this, which is just going to be, oh my God, YouTubers can make movies. Let's just give them a bunch of money so they can make movies for us. That's not how it works.
Yeah, they don't understand that that's not why those are successful.
So I just worry about that too, because then it's going to turn into kind of what it's turned into in the music industry, which is, oh, you go do our job for us. And then once we're ready to approach you, we'll give you some money. You go grow your fan base, grow an audience, create your own ideas for free, essentially. We'll take them from you, and then we'll give you money to make something. Like, that's kind of how the music industry works now, and it's fucked up, and I don't want that to happen in film and TV, but it looks like that's the way we're kind of going.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's been moving that way for a long time. In the 90s with the independent film like craze, you kind of saw the same thing where the whole thing was like, oh, go make your movie, get into a festival, and then, oh, a studio will buy it and it'll be a success and you're in. But of course, like, making a movie independently is crazy hard. And I think it's like this, in some ways, like making a successful YouTube channel is almost harder in some way. So it's like the same thing where there's this expectation that you need to do everything yourself before we can invest in you, versus how it was in like the 70s, for instance, where people like George Lucas literally were like, hey, I got this idea, Space Wizards, and studios were like, okay, we're gonna support you and you can do whatever the fuck you want. And boom, you got Star Wars. Like, that's how it should be. Obviously, like, there are levels to it. I'm not saying that, you know, studios should give people money for just like an idea that they pulled out their ass, but there needs to be more trust in people, especially younger people who are invested in film as a creative, as art, pretty much.
The world is changing, and it's not for the better. But we're going to take it back a little bit now. We're going to go back to 1964 specifically, because it's time to talk about A Hard Day's Night, the third album by the Beatles, released July 10th, 1964 by Parlophone Records in the UK. And there is also an American version of this album, which has a different track list and was released a few weeks earlier by Capitol Records. And United Artists released a soundtrack to this film that had some other additional songs in the United States. We're not listening to these editions because they are unavailable on streaming. There were 2 singles from the UK version and 4 from the American version, and we will be dealing with all of this later. I'm not even going to ask David if he's heard of the Beatles before, because that's the dumbest question.
We've talked about the Beatles before.
Exactly, and I will be bringing that up shortly. Yes. So I said, what am I even supposed to say about this album? This is the second time we're talking about the Beatles on here, and I still can't tell you anything new. It's John, Paul, George, and Ringo from Liverpool. What else do you need to know? So I'm going to ask David instead, have you heard this album in full before?
If there's any one album from the Beatles that I know, it is this album. I obviously grew up on the Beatles in general, but there was one album that I grew up hearing like front to back, and that was this album. And that is also paired with the fact that I also grew up with this movie. So like, both of these things are my childhood in a lot of ways, and I do have a lot of nostalgia for both, which you will see in my scores. But needless to say, like, I know this album incredibly well, to the point that as I was listening to this for this episode, as one song would end, I already started to hum the next song without hearing it yet. That's how well I knew it.
That's one of the best things to do.
Literally. It's a really nice feeling, honestly. And I mean, and that also shows you that I know this album as an album too, versus like individual songs, which I also honestly like and want to start doing more.
I do want to ask you, the version you grew up with, was it the UK version, which is what we listened to, or was it the American soundtrack?
I believe it was.
Okay.
I don't think we had the American soundtrack. I mean, that was back in the day of CDs.
That is hard to find, though. I feel like it was in the late 90s or early 2000s when they stopped pressing the American soundtrack version because it was a different label and then EMI got sold in like 2009 or 11, something like that.
I don't know. I didn't notice anything different here when I was listening to this. I actually did want to ask, because I know that you have, of course, like heard stuff from the Beatles. I know your favorite song is, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Eleanor Rigby.
Correct. We covered that last season.
I remembered. But what is your relationship to this album specifically? Because we've never really discussed it before.
Well, David, you're getting ahead of me because I did write that down in a little bit. But I will tell you. I will let
you get there when you get there.
No, I'll tell you right now. This is my first time hearing this album in full. As is the case with every other Beatles album, I knew all of the singles, but I did not know this album. This is the first album by the Beatles in their pop rock sound. All of the songs were recorded with the intention of being in the film, but not all of them made the cut. This was also their first album without covers, and the only album with all songs written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. This is also one of the 3 albums on which Ringo does not have a song where he sings lead vocals.
I also did want to shout out the fact that I think that George did write I'm Happy Just to Dance, but this was in the era of the Beatles where all songs were just automatically credited to John and Paul as a duo.
He did not write it.
He did not?
Nope.
Oh.
I will talk about that later.
That's so weird to me. All right, we'll get there.
We will get there. You already talked about how much you remembered about this album, but I did want to ask you, did you think you would like this album more than Revolver, which is the album we covered last season?
Absolutely. I mean, Revolver is great. In some ways, this is much more simple.
It is older, too.
It's also older, yeah. But you can also definitely tell that by the time that they got to Revolver, they had started to like experiment more. Everything got more complex from their like lyrics to the melodies. But at the same time, going to this, I knew that nostalgia would be a big part for me. And I think on some level, the simpler songs also really work because they are so simple. You know, like they just get you going and it's more about the vibe versus anything else. So yeah, I did think I would like this more. I will say, I think there are quite a few of their later albums that I think I will like quite a bit more than this, though, when we get there, which I think speaks to the fact, or speaks to how big of a fan I am, considering the score that I'm going to give this at the end of the episode. So
very interesting.
We'll get there.
The album received critical acclaim upon release, and general audiences loved it as well. It is included in many lists of the best rock albums, and also many lists of the best albums of all time. Rolling Stone ranked it number 263 on their 500 greatest albums of all time. It peaked at number 1 in the US and the UK, and is certified varying levels of platinum in the US depending on which version was released. And while it did not receive a Grammy, it has been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame.
That's wild.
All songs were written by Paul McCartney and John Lennon, as I mentioned. It was produced by George Martin, and it was engineered by Norman Smith. I said your favorite will be Can't Buy Me Love, and I could not choose a song that would be your least favorite, so I didn't. And I wrote down here, I think you'll give this album a 3.5, because I thought you would like it less than Revolver. And now, as you're speaking, I was like, okay, you gave Revolver a 4. I feel good about a 4. And now, the more you're talking about it, I'm like, damn, maybe this is a 4.5.
I will say, keep in mind that I grew up with this, because that plays a big part. Like, I'm sure that if I did not grow up with this, but was still a fan of the Beatles, quite a few of these songs would have lower scores. But, I mean, nostalgia works really hard for me. Let me just say that.
I think I might lock in a 4.5 then, actually.
Go for it.
I'm going to do it. This would be your highest rated album this season, if that is true.
That's right.
We will see, though.
We will see. We will absolutely see.
As is the case with all Beatles albums, every single song on here has a Wikipedia page that dives in deep about the way they crafted it. I'm not going to be talking about all of that stuff because some of it is just so technical where it's like, if you're a huge fan of the Beatles, you can go do that research as well. It's very cool to see. I'll be bringing up the few things that I think were interesting that I think David will find interesting. But as always, there's a ton of information out there about the Beatles, maybe the most of any artist ever. So if you're interested, go out and find it. I can promise you it is easy. So let's start it off with track number 1, the title track, A Hard Day's Night. And lead vocals are sung by John Lennon with Paul McCartney. I'm reading the way they have it on the track list on Wikipedia because I thought it was interesting. They differentiated it a little bit on there, and I have a very hard time telling everybody's voices apart. So
Yeah. It takes many years of Beatle intake to be able to tell them apart, I feel like. And I still get confused, honestly.
this song was the second single in both the US and the UK. In America, it was released on July 13th, 1964, with the B-side, I Should Have Known Better. And in Britain, it was released on July 10th with Things We Said Today as its B-side. It peaked at number 1 in virtually every country and was the number 13 song of the year in the US and number 5 song of the year in the UK. It was also one of, get ready for it, David, 7 songs by the Beatles that hit number 1 in the US in 1964. All in
Jesus
one year.
Christ.
7 number ones
I mean,
in 1 year.
I'm not surprised.
Nobody was doing it like them. And this song actually did win a Grammy for Best Performance by a Vocal Group in 1965. The song was written mostly by John Lennon, with, as it says on the Wikipedia page for the song, some minor contribution from Paul McCartney. The title comes from a Ringoism, which I'm sure you also learned about the movie.
Yeah.
He said in an interview, "We went to do a job and we worked all day and we happened to work all night. I came up still thinking it was a day, I suppose, and I said, it's been a hard day, and I looked around and saw it was dark, so I said, night. So we came to a hard day's night."
I love that.
The opening chord of this song is iconic, and people don't really know what it is. It's been studied by many musicians and mathematicians, and we know all 4 Beatles and producer George Martin were playing their instruments for the chord. One professor concluded that George Martin playing the piano ended up contributing the most to the body of the chord, but I doubt we'll ever really know what's going on there. The first of many times I say this on the album. It's so hard to talk about these songs because what is a new thing you can say?
Yeah.
It's
literally.
nice. I have no problems with it. That's about it. I gave the song a 3.
I was not sure what scores you would give, so I'm happy to hear that we're starting with a 3. Obviously, an iconic opening chord. I mean, yeah, what can I even add? This is so great. It's very simple, but I think that's why it works so well. It has such a fun melody. I think the vocals are so much fun because they do have a lot of like stuff in them that sounds like a hard day's night, like phrases that are just like weird, but in a fun way, if you know what I mean.
Sleeping like a log.
Yeah, literally stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah.
And I also did want to shout out the bridge. I feel like in general, so many of their bridges are so good and they're not talked about very much. So I just wanted to shout that out. We're off to an amazing start. This is are you ready for this? A 4.5.
Nice.
We're starting off so strong. Great way to open the album. Let me just say that opening chord.
Moving on to track number 2, I Should Have Known Better. Lead vocals on this one are by John Lennon. This was released as a B-side to the single A Hard Day's Night exclusively in the US, where it peaked at number 53. It did reach number 1 in Chile, the Netherlands, and Norway.
Hell
and
yeah.
it was eventually released as a B-side in the UK to the song Yesterday in 1976 for some reason.
What the hell?
No idea.
That's so weird.
This one was written solely by John Lennon, but credited to both him and Paul. The stereo version on streaming is awful to listen to, and I really hope they put the mono one up or just fix the aggressive panning done to it. This is like approaching Revolver levels of like bad mixing, bad remastering. It's so weird because I noticed it specifically on this song where I was like, holy shit, like it hurts. Your left ear is loving everything that's going on in here. And then there's like a cymbal or something in the right ear sometimes. It's just insane.
I wonder why they did use stereo so much.
I really don't know because there's stereo and there's mono mixes of every song on here. And some of them are slightly different too. Like they tracked them differently. So I don't really know how they choose which one to do, but this one's got to be replaced because I said it is a fine song. I have nothing to say about it. It's also a 3. I got no problems with it. I will say, however, and I think you will disagree with this, I didn't like this album overall as much as Revolver.
I can see that.
The songs, I feel like some of that is because they are kind of simple. I don't want to say like primitive and basic, but like that is kind of the thing. Not in like a negative way. It's just like this is like the first time people were doing this.
It is very true. And I think that if not for my nostalgia, this would be lower than Revolver. Because I think it is absolutely much more basic. And it feels like it's like the album that was the groundwork of what they would later do. So I absolutely agree with you on that.
I do want to say, though, that there's absolutely no problem with this being like basic and simple. It's just
because it still works so well, I think.
Exactly. All the songs are still good.
Yeah.
There's only one that I didn't like, but we'll get there.
Ooh, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear about that. Ironically, I feel like I overlooked this song a lot of times because it's actually one of my favorites on the album. It's not my favorite. Let me just throw that out there. But it's up there. For some reason, I don't know why I always forget about this song, but it feels incredibly fresh to me in some ways. I also think that the way it like shifts, like the way that the melody shifts is really interesting. I feel like you don't hear that a lot, but it's so good. It's a 5 for me.
Holy
honestly.
Shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was not expecting that. I could see this song, if anything, going down to a 4.5 at some point, but as it stands, this is a 5. This is up there.
Damn.
It's just so much fun, and I love the harmonica in it.
If this is a 5, that is your first ever album as a 5 on the podcast, which we'll see.
That's very true.
We'll see. Not to get ahead of ourselves, I do feel like the second half of the album is weaker.
Let me just say that I agree. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Track number 3, If I Fell. The lead vocals are by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. This was released July 20th, 1964 as the B-side to And I Love Her in the US, where it also peaked at number 53. It was also sort of released in the UK on December 4th, 1964, but it seems to be accidental. It was the A-side single with Tell Me Why as the B-side, but it appears to have been intended for other markets and not the UK. It did not chart in the UK, but it did reach number 1 in Norway. So shout out to Norway.
It's so weird to me how they had different like things for different markets. Like that just doesn't make sense to me.
I was doing research about this because I was very interested. This was like one of the first bands to cross over into another country. Like a lot of American music didn't go into the UK and a lot of British music didn't come over to America. They bridged the gap, and it was weird because they have a British label and then they have an American label, but the American label was in LA too. It wasn't like it was in New York. So it's, other side of the country.
Yeah.
And very different music industries between the two countries. And they thought they knew better, essentially, where it's like, okay, Capitol knows how to deal with the UK market, Capitol knows how to deal with the American market. Parlophone knows the UK market. And maybe they did, but maybe they didn't as well. I don't know. Because looking at some of these, it's like, I don't know. I feel like if I was in charge of the Beatles back then, I feel like I could have gotten a few more number ones out of the songs that they already have.
Yeah.
Like, that's just my take on it.
I agree.
But John Lennon said about this song in a Playboy interview, "That's my first attempt at a ballad proper. It shows that I wrote sentimental ballads way back when." Supposedly, he wrote it himself, although Paul claims it was collaborative. And I wrote a very classic type of song. It reminds me of 50s music, and I like it for that reason. And we have the line, "'Cause I've been in love before, and I found that love was more than just holding hands." This could be a reference to I Wanna Hold Your Hand, which came out the year before. The Beatles are growing up before our very eyes. I also gave this one a 3. Very consistent album.
Yeah, I mean, it's very consistent for me too, let me just say. This is also a 5.
Damn.
I love ballads, as a lot of you guys know. Yeah. Is your 4.5 theory going out the window right now?
I mean, I don't know. I'm sticking with it right now.
But no, I mean, I obviously love ballads, and I feel like these older ballads are my favorite style of ballad. And I think in general, the Beatles are very good at it. Like this quieter style fits their sound. And in some ways, I think it fits their earlier sound more because it brings a little bit more depth into it than maybe their louder, like dancey kind of pop songs. Like, I feel like there is more to this song, even though it's still very, very simple and straightforward. Yeah, just a very like melancholic and yet kind of sweet song. I love it. This is a 5, as I said before.
Track number 4, "I'm Happy Just to Dance With You." Lead vocals on this song are by George Harrison. This was not a single, but it did peak at number 95 on the Billboard Hot 100 as the B-side to I'll Cry Instead. This is the first paragraph of the composition section on Wikipedia for this song. The song was written specifically for George Harrison to sing. Years later, McCartney referred to it as a formula song, while Lennon remarked, "I would never have sung it myself." And I said, did they just hate each other?
In some ways, yes.
And this is an expansion of Paul's quote. "We wrote I'm Happy Just to Dance With You for George in the film. It was a bit of a formula song. We knew that in E, if you went to an A flat minor, you could always make a song with those chords. That change pretty much always excited you. This is one of these. Certainly, Do You Want to Know a Secret was. This one, anyway, was a straight co-written song for George. We wouldn't have actually wanted to sing it because it was a bit ... The ones that pandered to the fans in truth were our least favorite songs, but they were good. They were good for the time. The nice thing about it was to actually pull a song off on a slim little premise like that, a simple little idea. It was songwriting practice. The way he talks about this song, I don't know. I just feel like maybe they didn't like George as much. Makes me sad.
I feel bad for George. Yeah.
I also said it's kind of fun that at the beginning he sings before the dance is through, I think I'll love you too. And at the end of the song, he says, I've discovered I'm in love with you. So in like 1 minute and 55 seconds, he's fallen in love by dancing with this girl. So shout out to that. I gave the song a 3.5. I think this one's really good. And I don't care that it's a formula song. I feel like it's very nice. And I like George Harrison's vocals on it.
I agree. This song is just so much fun. Not only do I think his vocals are the best on this album, maybe, he is absolutely my favorite Beatle. The songs that he writes, both in the band and outside of the band, I think are some of the most interesting songs out of all four of them. And I think his post-Beatles career was the best out of all of them, honestly. So I am fully like a George fan. And I feel very bad for him because they overlooked him a lot, I feel like. But anyways, this song just makes me want to get up and dance, which I think is a stroke in its favor because it's just about dancing. Like, this is that type of song. It's quite simpler than most of the other songs in some ways, but that's honestly a good thing. I feel like this is the type of song that just needs to be purely vibes. That's it. This is a 4.5. If any song is going to go up to a 5, it's going to be this one. Let me just say. I feel like this and I Should Have Known Better might switch in the future, but that remains to be seen.
Track number 5, And I Love Her. Lead vocals by Paul McCartney. This was either the third, fourth, or fifth single in the US. Both And I Love Her and I'll Cry Instead were released on July 20th, 1964. And Ringo's theme, This Boy, was released sometime in July 1964 as well. That song was not included on this version of the album that we listened to, but it was included on the American edition. And I Love Her's B-side was If I Fell, and the single peaked at number 12 on the Hot 100. This is one of the songs that I feel like I could have gotten to number 1 if we spread it out like a week and didn't release 2 singles on the same day. I don't know. Hot take. There were 21 takes of this song, and partway through the second day of recording, a new section was added to the middle of it. John Lennon claims he wrote this, although Paul says he did. Either way, it is credited to both of them, despite Paul writing everything else on the song. And Paul said about it, it was the first ballad I impressed myself with. It's got nice chords in it. Bright are the stars that shine, dark is the sky. I like the imagery of the stars in the sky. It was a love song, really. The and in the title was an important thing. And I Love Her. It came right out of left field. You were right up to speed the minute you heard it. The title comes in the second verse, and it doesn't repeat. You would often go to town on the title, but this was almost an aside. Oh, and I love you. It still holds up, and George played really good guitar on it. It worked very well. I said a very nice, calm song with a minor key, which I always love. One of the most memorable on the album. And although it has the most streams, I'm surprised it isn't even more streams. This one feels very underrated in the canon of the Beatles. I gave this one a 3.5, and it is my favorite song on the album. I could see it going up to a 4. I'm not quite used to that section at the end where it changes keys and then kind of modulates back. You know, I don't love key changes. It works better, like I've said, in older music for me, though, because there is something kind of primitive about it where it's like, yeah, what else can we do? We can change keys. Where now it's like there's so many things you can do with like a computer to make a song more interesting.
True.
So
very true.
I don't know. I forgive it more in the olden days, but I gave this a 3.5. And yeah, it's great.
We are officially in agreement.
Nice.
Because this is the best song on the whole album. This is a 5. I mean, yeah, this is exactly the type of like ballad that I personally love. This is like, I think, the best example of their good ballads, let me just say. Because they do have some later that aren't maybe as good. But I mean, I can't even add much. Like I think the production and the melody just come together really beautifully. It's just a perfect 5.
So we agree on our favorite song on this album, but I want you to take a guess at how many times we've agreed this season on our favorite song on an album.
Honestly, it has to be up there, right? Like, I feel like we've done it quite a few times. Is it like 3, 4?
This is our 6th.
Whoa, that's crazy. I did not expect it to be that high.
Technically 6.5 because we also agreed that Stay the Night by Zed was the best song on the album and it wasn't on the album.
Right.
So we agreed about the best song on the album and the best song that should have been on the album.
That's crazy.
This is our 6th this season, which seems very high.
Yeah, that is very high. Hey, maybe we're finally like coming together in some way.
I don't think we are. Because
probably not. But,
you just mentioned before this that you really loved Olivia Rodrigo's album and
True.
I hated it.
We're going to have some contentious stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah. Track number 6, Tell Me Why. Lead vocals by John Lennon with Paul McCartney and George Harrison. This one was written by John Lennon in either Paris or New York City. The only time it was performed live was for the film, and it wasn't even performed, it was just lip-synced. I like the instrumentation on this one. It feels very bluesy while keeping that upbeat tempo that they're good at. I do think the vocals get a little whiny and annoying after a little bit, so I won't return to it as much, but it is still catchy and overall good. This one is a 3.
I do agree, and not to spoil it, but I think at this point, you kind of start the second half of the album, which is weaker, in my opinion.
I will tell you, legally speaking, officially speaking, Can't Buy Me Love is on side 1. Side 2 starts on track number 8, which is kind of interesting. So side 1 is longer.
But I guess to me, like the way I just split it up based off like which side is stronger, I would start it off here. This is not a bad song in any way. It definitely feels much sillier than the first part of the album to me. Like kind of what we talked about where this album is much more straightforward. I think that even within this album, the first section maybe feels a little bit deeper in some ways, and then the second section is the much more straightforward part and much more like surface level, which again is not a bad thing, but I think that kind of starts with this song a little bit more, and I think this is one of the bigger examples of that. I think it is like quite repetitive, but it's still a lot of fun. It just does get a little tiring after a little point. This is a 3.5.
Oh, yeah. Is this your least favorite?
No, there's another one that's my least favorite, which we'll get to at some point in time.
I do think it's interesting that you said that you think the first section is deeper and the second section
in some ways
is like more formulaic. I think I completely disagree. I think the first section is much more formulaic and I like it better. And the second section gets a little bit deeper and more complex. And I just feel like they lose sight of the melodies a little bit more.
I mean, I can also see that. I guess to me, what I mean is that it just feels more interesting in some ways. I don't know if deeper is the best word.
I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know the exact word to use, but it just feels more, it feels like there's more there in some way to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Track number 7, the official last song of the first side of the album, Can't Buy Me Love. Lead vocals are by Paul McCartney. This was the lead single in both the US and the UK, with the B-side You Can't Do That. It was released March 16th, 1964 in the US and July 10th, 1964 in the UK. The song peaked at number 1 virtually everywhere, and it was the number 1 song of the year in the UK. It was also the 4th biggest song of the 1960s decade in the UK, and the 35th best-selling single ever in the UK. This one was written solely by McCartney. He said about the song's meaning, "I think you can put any interpretation you want on anything, but when someone suggests that Can't Buy Me Love is about a prostitute, I draw the line." He went on to say, "The idea behind it was that all these material possessions are all very well, but they won't buy me what I really want." This song was recorded in Paris, and McCartney's vocals were overdubbed in London. This was the only song performed by the full band that was recorded outside of the UK, except for the German translated versions of their songs. I want to read the 4 Billboard Hot 100 records this song provided. This is straight from the Wikipedia page because I found it extremely interesting. Until Billboard began using SoundScan for their charts in 1991, this song had the biggest jump to the top position, number 27 to number 1. Now I think the record is 99 to 1, and there's a weird caveat with that because I think it premiered with 1 day of eligibility, and then the next week it was number 1 easily. But that's an aside. This song also gave the Beatles 3 consecutive chart-topping singles, since I Want to Hold Your Hand was replaced at number 1 by She Loves You, which was in turn replaced by Can't Buy Me Love. The 3 songs spent a combined total of 14 consecutive weeks at number 1. This is the only time an artist had 3 number 1 singles in a row. I find that fascinating because there have been multiple artists within the past 20 or so years that have had multiple like back-to-back number 1 singles, but they never replace each other, or just one of them will replace each other. When Can't Buy Me Love reached number 1 on April 4th, 1964, the Beatles held the entire top 5 on the Hot 100, the next positions being filled by Twist and Shout, She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and Please Please Me, respectively. No other act had held the top 5 spots simultaneously, a record not broken until 2021. And finally, during its second week at number 1, the Beatles had 14 songs on the Hot 100 at the same time.
Jesus Christ, that's wild.
And this blew my mind. Ella Fitzgerald released a cover of this song. That's just like...
What?
Yes. Not necessarily that she would cover the Beatles, but the timeline there just doesn't feel right to me. But it is 1964. That's like... That makes complete sense. It's just wild. Like, the timeline is crazy because music was changing so rapidly throughout the 60s. This is also the first Beatles single with just one singer and no backing harmonies. They originally did have backing harmonies, but they took them off because it sounded too busy or it didn't work for the song. This song is also very swingin', which I did not remember.
Yeah.
It's got a little 50s going on, which makes it feel a little more timeless in a weird way, although it's also kind of dated at the same time. I ended up giving this one a 3. I think it's very solid.
I did want to mention, and I didn't notice it specifically here, but in general, their use of harmonies is so good. And I feel like it adds a lot considering how simple the songs are. I feel like that's something that we need to bring back nowadays.
I agree.
Because we sadly don't do it.
I will tell you, we have an album coming up this season that has a lot of great harmonies like this. They're also from the UK.
Ooh.
And I think you are really going to like them. So keep an eye out for that, everyone. Check our Instagram if you want to see who that's going to be a week before the episode comes out. So, at Uncultured Pop Culture. Anyway, continue.
Again, it definitely feels like a sillier song in some ways, but it still like gets you going. I think that's really what makes these work for me, is that they're all just so much fun that it doesn't even matter if they are quite simple. They're all just very catchy. Like, I mean, I'm obviously a very specific scenario considering that I know these so well, but like whenever I read the title, the chorus just pops into my head. And I think that speaks to the fact that they're just so fun and catchy. Yeah, this is great. And I did not even notice that there were no other voices on this, honestly. It's a 4.
Track number 8, Anytime at All. Lead vocals on here are by John Lennon. This is the official start of side 2 of the album, written by John Lennon, but Paul McCartney provided the instrumental section. There is essentially nothing I can say about this song, maybe the most straightforward on here, and it's good. That's it. 3.
Damn, that was fast. Yeah, it's a nice song. It's, again, maybe sillier, but it's also very sweet to me because, it's about being there for someone. In a lot of ways, it feels very earnest. And I think this is, to me, the song in the second half that feels maybe closest to the songs in the first half, if that makes any sense. It's still a 4, but it does feel closest to me.
Track number 9, I'll Cry Instead. Lead vocals by John Lennon. This was also the 3rd, 4th, or 5th single in the US, released on July 20th, 1964. It peaked at number 25 on the Hot 100 and number 16 in Canada. Both John and Paul agree that John wrote this song by himself. It was supposed to be for the open field sequence of the film, but Richard Lester didn't like it.
Oh.
Some critics have argued that this is a country song, or at least in the genre rockabilly. It's also one of Lennon's darkest songs about the frustration he had around being so adored, but also unable to innovate in the sound of the band. And I wrote, I think Lester was onto something with leaving this out of the film. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not particularly interesting. The lyrics are also not very good when compared to the other simplistic writing on the album. I gave it a 2.5. This is kind of where the album starts to drag a little bit more for me.
I do agree. This is my least favorite song on the album. It's a song that's also not mentioned much, and I think that's because it's the weakest song. In some ways, it feels like a cover almost because it almost doesn't feel like to their level, if that makes any sense.
I could see that, yeah.
So ultimately, this is a 3. It's the lowest I go, and it's also my least favorite song on the whole album, as I mentioned before. And I mean, I know I said it before, but I could see this being like the true beginning of the second half. But to me, like, I still consider the previous little section part of that too. Just because like that's when, not to spoil things, but my main like long thing of fours like kind of starts going.
Track number 10, Things We Said Today. Lead vocals on here by Paul McCartney. This is the B-side to A Hard Day's Night, the single in the UK. This was the last of Paul's 3 solo written songs. He wrote it about his girlfriend Jane Asher while they were on vacation in the Caribbean. It has a hint of sadness to it, like he knew that their relationship wasn't going to last. As he sings in the song, not a lot to say. This does nothing for me, I'm sorry. It is a 2.5.
That's interesting because I feel like this song is kind of underrated. It has some interesting melody, like modulation, stuff like that, which, or I guess not melody, would that be tone modulation?
I don't know. I honestly don't really remember it. It's just kind of whatever to me.
There's something going on, pretty much.
It probably is like key changes too, because I know there were a few of those, and I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, which which
is probably why I gave it 2.5. I just kind of don't remember a few of these because I was just like, yeah, they're just all the same, and I'm never going to listen to them again. You know,
I can see that. I do. I feel like I do like that quite a bit in this song. I also like the harmony, and that's what makes it maybe work more for me than it does for you, and that's why it is still at a 4. And let me tell you, it is hard to talk about these because everyone knows these.
Yes. I think it's also interesting that we both don't have as much to say about the songs later in the album on here, particularly because they're weaker, but also because of something I will be bringing up with, I believe, the last song.
I'm interested.
But we have a few more. Track number 11, When I Get Home. Lead vocals by John Lennon, and it's also solely written by John Lennon. I wrote, the vocals are too screamy and harsh, and I find them annoying to listen to.
Oh.
This could go down to a 2, and it was, but it still is catchy, and there's a level of competence exhibited throughout the Beatles' music that I'll give them an extra half a point. Why not? This is a 2.5. This is my least favorite. I don't like this song.
That's interesting.
And it probably should be a 2.
Yeah, this song is interesting because I was kind of going back and forth between a 3.5 and a 4. And let me tell you, I raised a lot of the scores a little bit because of my nostalgia when I was listening through this. Like, quite a few of these would be 3.5s in the second half. But with this song specifically, I was going back and forth. It's a song that I don't remember very much, honestly. And it is for sure one of their sillier songs. I feel like it doesn't have as much depth as some of the other songs, even in the second half, have. And I'm still kind of going back and forth. I feel like ultimately I might keep it at a 3.5 because I'm trying not to let my nostalgia get too much in the way, though.
You can. That's fine.
No, yeah, I know.
I've
But
done it.
I also just want to like even things out, I guess. I don't know. I'm keeping it at 3.5. I feel good with the 3.5.
Okay, sounds good. I'm good with that. That's fine.
Me too.
I mean, I don't like this song, so
Yeah. I mean,
I'll accept it. Track number 12. The thing I'm always telling David, you can't do that. Lead vocals by John Lennon. This was released as the B-side to the lead single Can't Buy Me Love in March of 1964, and it peaked at number 48 in the US. This one was written solely by John and selected for the live performance in the theater for the film. It was not used, though. It was inspired by Motown, specifically the artist Wilson Pickett. George played a Rickenbacker 360 Deluxe guitar on this song. It was the second one ever made, and it was the first use of it in a recording. I said, wow, if only there were songs written that alluded to John Lennon's attitude towards women. Guess we can never know what he was like. However, I do think this is a catchy song, and it's melodically very good. This is my favorite of the second half of the album. I gave this one a 3, and if it wasn't for the misogynistic lyrics that are a little bit too, like, I don't know, you can pay attention to them and pick them out pretty easily on this song, I feel like.
Yeah.
I did end up giving it a 3. It could have been higher, but I don't know. It's decent. It's fine.
I mean, you guys know that I don't listen to lyrics, so...
And you're better off for it, specifically here.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. With quite a few of their songs, I think, sometimes. This song weirdly feels like off-kilter, but in a way that fits the song. Like, it feels like it was done on purpose. And I do like that. I think the chorus is great, specifically in the song. that's the part that works the best for me. And it feels in some ways different enough. Like this song stands out a little bit to me because it feels a little bit different when compared to the stuff in the second half. This is still a 4, like it doesn't go higher than any of the other songs, but I know it stands out in some ways. It feels like a little bit unique. And hey, maybe part of that is the misogyny, who knows?
Track number 13, the final track, and the thing that the Terminator always says, "I'll be back."
Oh, you stole what I was going to say.
And it wouldn't surprise me if that was the only thing you wrote about this song.
God damn it.
Lead vocals on here are by John Lennon with Paul McCartney. And George Martin said that he'd like to include the best material at the start and finish of each side of the album and would hide the weaker songs in the back middle of the album. I think you can tell. That was what I was alluding to before.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a run of a few songs, like whatever, track 9 to 11, 12 maybe in there. That's like, I don't know. It's not as strong as other stuff.
Yeah.
This song also does nothing for me. It just feels like it keeps changing for the sake of changing, but never really going anywhere. This is a 2.5, and I don't think it was necessary to have on the album.
That's interesting. I actually quite like this song. I feel like it is a great end to the album. And I really like the way it kind of goes back and forth between a major key and a minor key.
Yeah, you know I hate that.
Yeah, no, I know you hate that. But it does really work for me. It feels very unique in a lot of ways. Yeah. Yeah, it stands out to me in that way. I feel like both this and You Can't Do That kind of stand out from the second half as the two maybe like more interesting songs. And especially this song. I just think it's quite different from everything on the album. And I like that quite a bit. It's a 4. If anything, I could see this potentially going up to 4.5 one day, although probably not. I think it will stay here.
We have reached the end of the album.
That's right.
And I'm going to start it off with a question specifically for this episode. This is the first time on the podcast we have listened to a second album by the same artist. So with that, how does this compare to Revolver, and what is your score?
Let me put it like this. I think Revolver is a better album. I think it's deeper. It's more complex. That being said, I think this is a similar situation to Knives Out where like, you know that one of them is better. You can see that it's better, but you still prefer the other one because it just speaks more in some ways. I think here it's less that it speaks more to me, but I think my nostalgia for A Hard Day's Night is so strong that I like it more than I like Revolver.
I think nostalgia is speaking to you in a way, though,
true,
because I think
true.
that's an emotion that's being communicated.
That is a good point
through the music.
No, yeah, and I mean, I think this also works in the sense that it really shows you like the base for everything else that they would do.
Yeah.
Because I think if you go to their earlier albums, like, yeah, you can still see it in some of their songs, but this is the first example where you see it in like all of the songs, I think.
And like I said, no covers on this album as well. This is like this is the first Beatles album truly, start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think
which
that's
I'm very
nice.
happy about. Don't get me wrong, a cover can be great, but typically I prefer it if it's just fully, you know, the artist's stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to throw up my score to answer the long gestating question. This is, in fact, a 4.5. You were absolutely right.
Nice.
It's just like, I can't give it a 5, I feel like.
I understand.
You
Yeah.
know?
There is a very special thing that happens when you give something a 5, which seems to keep happening for you with movies this season.
Yeah, I mean,
in general.
Every season, honestly.
But I get it. I think we will be ever searching for that elusive perfect 5. Maybe it'll be next week. Who knows? I don't know. I feel like you're really going to love next week's album. And if you want to know what that album is, obviously that Instagram is linked in the description. I'm just going to keep mentioning that throughout the episode.
Hint, hint.
But I also have to score this album. I gave it a 3 out of 5.
Damn.
It is worse than Revolver. I gave Revolver a 3.5. I think I liked the evolution, the innovation, kind of just the overall soundscape of Revolver more than I liked this.
Right.
And I do think that this is easier to listen to in general. And there are some good songs on here. I just don't think they're all at the level of Revolver. And I do think the back half of this album kind of does trail off where it's like, I don't know, I could give it a 3.5, but it's like, if I'm returning to this album, I'm probably going to skip a few songs in the middle back of this album.
And I completely agree that the second half of the album is weaker.
And I think that's a valid reason for you not to give it a 5.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree.
if you're not going to listen to all of it, I don't think it's a 5.
If it was more consistent, then then it could be a 5. But I think that's the main thing that did keep me from giving it a 5.
And I have to ask you the questions I ask every week. Will you add any of these songs to playlists, and will you return to this album as a whole?
I mean, these are in playlists. These are in specifically my rock playlists. I've also made a Beatles playlist for Jennifer, who
Nice.
has become a fan kind of through me. So
Very cool.
yeah, that includes songs from this specific album. Less stuff in the second half, although I feel like there are a few there that are in some various playlists. I will say, I've said this before, I don't really listen to albums that much. I've definitely gotten into it more this year, thanks to this podcast, honestly.
Hell yeah.
So now there are a few albums that I do listen to, and I'm very happy about that, and I want to keep doing it. That being said, with something like this, I know the song so well that I just don't have a need to listen to this as an album. I'm just going to go and listen to my favorite songs. That's fully how I'm going to do it.
And I have to check, are you still a fan of the Beatles?
Oh, I mean, 100%.
Nice. Me too.
That's never going to stop. I'm happy to hear that you are.
It is a very basic opinion, I feel like, but it is the correct one because
Yes.
this is just like good music, like straight up, you know?
Yeah. No, there is a reason why they have the status that they have, I think.
And even sometimes I feel like it's kind of underrated. Like these guys actually might have changed everything in music. Like
I
this is
think they
almost a
did.
Lady Gaga moment where it's like looking back, it's like, oh my God, I think everybody copied them for the next 20 years.
Okay, let me put it like this. I question if rock would have its place that it had in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then I question if pop would have had its place that it had from like the 90s through now. Like I genuinely question if that would have happened without the Beatles.
I don't think it would. I think there would be another band that would take their place,
Yeah.
but I don't know that they would have been as good.
Yeah, I agree.
And finally, I have the most important question of them all. Is this a good pairing?
Gee, I don't know. It might be the worst pairing we've ever done.
Honestly, I don't even know how we can top this outside of just like another thing exactly like this.
This was made to be together, like literally. And let me tell you, it can't be beat, but this could be matched by, ironically, another Beatles album and movie that they like made together, aka Help and the movie Help. So
Yeah.
it could be matched by the Beatles and maybe no one else, honestly.
But on that note, it's time to talk about the movie.
The movie called A Hard Day's Night.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, who would have thought? I'm going to throw the logline at you, and I want to hear what you think. This is, as usual, of course, the IMDb logline. Over 2 days in the life of the Beatles, the band struggles to keep themselves and Paul McCartney's mischievous grandfather in check while preparing for a live TV performance.
That might be the best you can do.
Perfect. I will say I have one problem with this, and that's that they did not mention that the grandfather is very clean. That's the one thing
True.
they should have mentioned. This is, of course, a musical comedy. It's directed by Richard Lester, produced by Walter Shenson, written by Alan Owen, spelled A-L-U-N.
Oh.
You know what spelling it is? It's like the spelling you would see in a fantasy novel where they want to change it just a little.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, literally. Cinematography by Gilbert Taylor, edited by John Jimpson. Sorry for saying that word, but that's the name. Music by Lennon McCartney and George Harrison. It was like that because that's the way it is on the album, I guess.
They used a George Harrison song that was not on this album briefly, so that's why he gets that credit, but it doesn't appear in the actual movie. It just says songs by Lennon McCartney.
This film is distributed by United Artists, which we touched upon and which we will talk about, and it's rated G. It stars John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, and Wilfred Bramble as Paul's grandfather. Do you want to guess the whole reason why this movie exists?
Can I guess that it's the Ed Sullivan? It has something to do with the Ed Sullivan performance?
No,
Okay, it doesn't.
but it's something you brought up earlier.
United Artists said you need to make an album for us, and they said, okay, we'll make a movie?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's that simple.
Literally, the whole reason why this movie was made was for the soundtrack album.
Oh, nice.
Let's start from the beginning. So, United Artists came up with the idea because they obviously wanted to capitalize on the success that the Beatles were having during Beatlemania. This is, of course, Beatlemania as it's starting up. People are going crazy. It's the first time you've ever seen like a group get this big and become big like everywhere. So it's crazy.
And 64 was the year that they came to America and performed on Ed Sullivan, and they did a tour as well. So this is like right at the beginning.
That's absolutely right. I think they were bigger in the UK at this point. Like they were already big in the UK, and then in the US it was just like starting up. But that's absolutely right, because like this film was filmed in 1964. So like they were like just starting to blow up in the US. So, of course, United Artists wanted to capitalize on that.
I kind of can't comprehend how busy they were all the time, because like they would record multiple songs in a day, and then they'd perform the next day, and then they'd shoot this movie, and it's like, and then they're flying across the seas,
it's genuinely wild,
all over the world. I would retire from touring as well if that was my life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and the other point is, as you can see in the film, the people watching them would scream so loudly that no one could even hear the music. So it's like, what is the point of touring at that point if no one's there for the music? It's just to see you. So yeah, no, I completely agree. But yeah, I mean, United Artists wanted to get the success. They were like, you know what? Let's make a low budget black and white movie. Let's film it in March and release it in June.
Crazy turnaround.
Why the turnaround? They thought that Beatlemania would be over by the end of summer.
Whoa.
They were like, it won't last that long, so we got to do this fast. Like it's gonna run out. And the reason why it was low budget was because they honestly did not give a fuck about the movie, because all they cared about, as I mentioned before, was the soundtrack album. They wanted to release music from the Beatles because that's obviously what people are gonna buy. But Capitol Records was the American label, and they owned, you know, the rights to the whatever they were gonna release. So obviously United Artists could not release anything themselves except for a soundtrack album, which they would own the rights to. And I could see them it's all complicated. They might have done this like together with Capitol Records, because I think Capitol Records might have wanted to release something earlier or something. It's complicated, but pretty much the important thing to know is they are making this movie for the soundtrack album specifically and nothing else. They do not care about the film.
And the crazy thing about all of that is there's the United Artists soundtrack album, and then Capitol made a completely different album that came out around the same time. There are singles that are from both of these albums, and
it gets very
so
confusing.
Wildly uncoordinated between the two companies, because they were both like, oh, we can do it better than the other one. And neither one of them really could, but at the same time, they were also contributing to the success of each other.
Yeah,
which is
literally.
just like insane.
I mean, hey, it was a smart decision, because they did make money on the soundtrack album for sure. Now they turned to Richard Lester. The Beatles had received a list of directors, and John Lennon specifically was a fan of Richard Lester. So he was like, hey, I want him. And he was given a budget of £200,000. The Beatles themselves were paid collectively, mind you, £40,000. Not that much if you think about it, like £10 or 10,000 each. Then again, they were making money from everything else, so sure, they were fine. And they brought on Alan Owen to write the script, and he was a Scouser, aka someone from Liverpool, just like the Beatles. And John Lennon told him, quote, "Trouble with you, Alan, is that you're a professional Scouser." Alan replied, "It's better than being an amateur one." I like that quote. He spent a considerable time with them because he wanted to learn the way that they spoke and interacted with each other, but also he wanted to learn their lifestyle. And as he was told by the Beatles, their lives were, quote, "a train in a room and a car in a room and a room and a room," end quote, which of course he uses in the film. Based off of his time with them, he got the idea to portray them as prisoners of their fame, which you can absolutely see in the film. And he also assigned each Beatle a specific personality. This is, of course, kind of based off their own personalities in some ways, but I do think in some ways it's also like a more fictionalized version of each of them. So John became the smartass, Paul was the cute and sensible one, George was quiet and shy, and then Ringo, poor Ringo, is the dim and sad Beatle.
Dim and sad?
So that's how it was described. It's kind of like,
What?
yeah, he's stupid and depressed all the time.
I did not
was
get that
it.
at all. He seemed crazy.
I did not
and
really
fun.
get that either. And I think the reason why is because of Ringo himself. Like, I feel like he brings that himself to it. He also came up with the idea of the very clean grandfather. Why very clean? Because the Beatles were often called very clean because of their look. And also because the actor Wilfred Bramble played a very popular character on the TV series Steptoe and Son. And in that series, he was often described as a dirty old man. So Alan thought that it would be fun for everyone to start calling him a very clean old man now for this film. Filming lasted for 7 weeks and was all shot in chronological order, which is not typically done.
I was wondering.
They chose to shoot in black and white because it was cheaper, as most decisions are made on movies. And Lester decided to go for a very French New Wave and British kitchen sink movement style. So very like true to life, very fluid, almost documentary-ish. They had to deal with something that they were trying to get in the film themselves, which was Beatlemania. They, of course, were paying extras to be Beatle fans, but they honestly did not need to at all. Because real fans would notice them filming and would literally start swarming the production, where it became almost impossible to shoot. And I have a quote from Lester where he said, quote, "We couldn't control the crowd. It became impossible to shoot. Every day we got one take. We got police permission to shoot in whichever street. We do take one, and suddenly 2,000 kids would arrive from nowhere. I think we had a mole in our production department. The police would rip up the permit, and we'd have to go off and find a street 6 blocks away and hope we could get another take in before they found us again. It was total guerrilla filmmaking," end quote.
That is wild.
That sounds absolutely crazy. But I think that also just sounds like so much fun for some of the people on set. Maybe not the people that have to move everything. It sounds fun to me. I would like to experience that. Something else that I read that was very interesting to me was that there was actually not a lot of improvisation on set, which I would not have thought. Like, I would have thought that they would have come up with little stuff on their own. But it seems like they did generally stick to the script. It seems like Lennon was the one who maybe would ad-lib the most and maybe get the other Beatles started here and there. But mostly, they stayed with the actual script. And they eventually did a wrap after 7 weeks and entered 9 weeks of post-production, which is so weird to me.
Insane.
That post was longer than the filming, and even then was not even like, it was 1 week over 2 months.
9 weeks
just
is
wild.
like, oh my God.
This
The
absolutely
turnaround
wild.
on this is crazy. That's just the thing that I'm realizing most of all. 7 number ones in 1964. They made a movie in a few months. Like, it's all so fast.
The rate at which they were doing things was absolutely wild. Like, no wonder that they got burnt out. You know, I would get burnt out doing like a quarter of this.
My hot take is we need to bring this back. Like, we need people who are as prolific as them, who can make things quickly or just have a lot of stuff saved up so they can all release it quickly and just get insanely popular. That was kind of like how Lady Gaga was moving from like 2008 to 2011. You know, she did like 3
especially with
albums,
the Fame and then the Fame Monster, like kind of back to back, right?
and Born This Way immediately.
Yeah.
Like, and it was just single after single, and you know, videos, her crazy outfits too at like all these awards shows. Like, she was always in the pop culture zeitgeist, like the Beatles were.
But yeah, they like were doing this super fast. And to your point that they were kind of writing the music around the time that they were filming, they went through several different titles, including The Beatles and Beatlemania, before they struck on the title It's a Hard Day's Night from, as you mentioned before, Ringo, who coined the phrase. And after they decided to name the film It's a Hard Day's Night, then and only then did John Lennon and Paul McCartney, with the help of George and Ringo, go and write that song in one night. So literally, the song was written like after the film had been titled.
Very
so
interesting.
it's literally all happening like at the same time. Yeah, it's crazy. Something else that happened before the film was released was that the executives at United Artists watched some of it and they were like, "Hey, Lester, can you please dub the Beatles over with mid-Atlantic accents so American audiences can understand them?" Which is just wild. Can you imagine them just like...
That'd be hilarious. And also, at the same time, I had a very hard time understanding them sometimes. Their accents are crazy.
They are crazy. I would to anyone watching this, watch it with subtitles,
Absolutely.
please, because you're gonna miss so many amazing jokes.
And I feel like even with subtitles, I still missed some jokes because it is very British and
It
it's
is,
very of
yes.
the time. And I was not alive in that time and also not alive in the UK and don't understand a lot of the references.
It's also very much like their specific style of humor, which is very sarcastic and tongue in cheek.
Yes.
In some, like, sometimes you'll be like, wait, was that a joke? But it is, which I personally really like because I love that style of humor. But we'll get there when we get there. Thankfully, they did not have to redo the voices because, as Paul McCartney would say, quote, "Look, if we can understand a fucking cowboy talk Texan, they can understand us talking Liverpool," end quote. Maybe not, but still.
Shout out.
The movie came out July 10th, 1964 in the UK and August 12th, 1964 in the US. And even though it was made to sell soundtracks, it became a big hit. It made $14 million worldwide, which is $145 million in 2025 money. Did you have a question?
No, I just can't get over the fact that the album came out after the soundtrack album in the US.
Yeah.
Because the
came out
soundtrack
after,
album
which is
came out
what they
before the
wanted.
UK soundtrack album. Because July 10th was the day the album came out in the UK. But the soundtrack album in the US, which had like the different track list, came out in June.
They literally, they did what they
Insane.
wanted to do, which was to release the first Beatles thing like as soon as they possibly could. They won in a way. But it didn't even, like, it mattered, but they ended up like making double money because the movie was also a success. The movie received positive reviews. A lot of people noted it as an excellent jukebox musical and a great celebration of the Beatles, as well as a satire of the Beatles and Beatlemania. Ringo also specifically received praise. A lot of people called him a natural actor and the best of all the Beatles, and that's probably why he has the biggest role in the film. I think they kind of noticed. And of course, he would continue to go on acting in films both with and without the Beatles. And of course, the movie proved United Artists wrong because it did not only catch the tail end of Beatlemania, but actually in some ways amplified it and extended it along with the various albums that they released in the next, 6 years, and helped to cement them as pop stars. It would receive 2 Academy Award nominations at the 37th ceremony, which I did not know. Can you guess what the 2 are?
Soundtrack, if that's a category, and I would do screenplay probably.
It was nominated for Best Screenplay and Best Score, so you're absolutely right.
Let's go.
It did not win any, and you want to know the ironic thing? The Beatles were not nominated for Best Original Song
Damn.
in any capacity,
That's fucked
which
up.
is wild. The song that would win was Chim Chimery from Mary Poppins.
That's not a bad
Which-
song, but like,
Not a
come
bad
on.
song, but
it's the Beatles.
The Beatles should have been nominated and won, of course. And of course, as we have kind of talked about, the Beatles would go on to reinvent rock and pop music throughout the 60s until their breakup in 1970. They remain the biggest band of all time to this day. They would also go on to work with Richard Lester on another film titled Help, which accompanied their album of the same name to more muted success. This was followed by Magical Mystery Tour, which received mixed reviews, and the animated film Yellow Submarine, which became arguably their biggest hit when it comes to movies. And now come my questions. What did you think this was going to be? And did it live up to that? Because what is this even?
I mean, first of all, I didn't think this would actually be a movie. I kind of thought this was just like a series of performances. Like,
Oh, more like a concert film?
in a way, yes, where it's like there's not really a story. It's just like, let's get to the next sequence, almost like a series of music videos.
Yeah, I get that.
But it actually was a film, and it was kind of funny. It was enjoyable, and it was better than I thought it would be.
I'm very happy to hear that. And that does bring me to the next question of how does this compare to Mamma Mia, considering that they're both jukebox musical? Or do they like correlate at all to you?
They do feel similar in a way, but I didn't really clock that it was a jukebox musical necessarily because it is the band in a movie about their music, you know? Like, It's kind of weird.
It is a little bit different, yeah. I don't know if jukebox musical is even the real like.
I've seen it referred to as a jukebox musical as well, so I don't know. I don't want to like spoil my score already. I did enjoy it more than Mamma Mia.
Oh,
But I do think that there is a limit on the amount of points I guess you can get for making a relatively simple movie that just has a lot of music in it.
in some ways, it maybe correlates to the album, and ironically,
yeah, you may see that reflected in my score a little bit.
I wonder what your score is going to be. The last thing I did want to bring up before we get into your general thoughts was considering your history with British movies.
Yeah.
Did like the humor and the style of it work for you?
Oh yeah. Way better than any other
Fuck
British
yeah.
comedy that we've seen.
I'm so happy to hear that because I love the humor in this.
I do wonder if some of it is because it was made also with American audiences in mind.
Yeah,
But
could
I
see
kind
that.
of just think that like when British humor works, it really works. And a lot of the times that we've watched it, it just really hasn't worked for me. But this time it was
I
like,
get
yeah,
that.
start to finish, I'm bought in.
Yeah.
Like I get it.
And I will say, I think a big part of that is also the Beatles and the fact that they are themselves just very, very funny.
Yes.
And it's their style of comedy.
And it's the fictionalized versions of themselves too, which is like adds another layer to it.
Yeah, like they can go over the top with it, especially with their running gags and stuff like that. I mean, I'm going to throw it to you now if there's anything you want to add.
I mean, this is a pretty simple movie. There's a loose thread tying it all together. There's a lot of great songs. There's some fun moments here and there with the like music video aspects of it. There's a few like technical problems because, you know, it's old and you can tell that they were rushing to get it done, you know, and it's a low budget film, you know,
Yeah.
but like overall, it was enjoyable. I had a good time. This isn't a movie that I'm going to be like, yeah, let's rewatch it tomorrow, but it's not one that I'm opposed to rewatching in the future. Like I did mention
I'm
before,
happy to hear that.
I liked it more than Mamma Mia. I liked it more than High School Musical, which are the other two musicals that we've done.
That's a surprise.
Ultimately, it is a 3, so same score as the other two, but it's a higher 3.
You guys are kind of going to hear the same thing from me, I feel like. I grew up with this movie. I grew up with this in Help specifically.
Can I guess that it's a 5 real quick?
I guess that's a 5. I won't say specifically, but I mean, you guys know it's a 5. So anyway.
I won't say specifically. By the way, this is a 5. Exactly
yes,
as
this
you were
is
thinking.
a 5. This is absolutely a 5. You guys know me. If this was not something I grew up with, it would probably be like a 4 or 4.5.
This is definitely a David coded movie as well. So I think
It
that
is.
even, like you said, even if you
Absolutely.
didn't grow up with it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see you liking this for
It
sure.
would still be high up there. It's my type of movie, I feel like.
For sure.
But the fact that like I grew up with this, you know, it just makes it very like special for me. It is in many, it's super simple. It's literally just kind of like following the Beatles as they tried to have as little responsibility as possible and like just like get into fun situations. That's the whole movie. There's not much to it in terms of plot, but also I don't think there is a need for there to be a large plot. Like it's more about just having fun than following a story or like any sort of, you know, emotional character or anything. You know, it's purely just a movie about not having responsibility and just having as much fun as you possibly can. In some ways, I think it kind of correlates to the album in that way. It's just simple, straightforward, and highly enjoyable. And that's kind of the impression that I've always had. And I will say, I think this is one of the funniest like musicals and just movies in general. Like I love the comedy in this. Like this is one of my favorite styles of comedy, and it's a style that people don't do very much because they don't know how to, and I think that's a shame.
Yeah.
Because it's really underrated.
It's sarcastic, but it's also borderline slapstick at parts too,
Yeah.
which is like very unique.
It's also so random, which I love.
Yes.
I think that's the
exactly.
other part that really makes it work.
I do also want to say, I haven't watched The Monkees. I have seen that listed as that was directly influenced by this. I do have another one that I did watch, Big Time Rush.
Oh.
I feel like that is very indebted to this movie, this style of humor, this way of approaching the subject matter of a band living like their everyday lives and being like crazy people, essentially.
Right.
I love this idea for crossing music and movies together And I feel like if I'm thinking about like modern day, obviously when One Direction was all alive and still active, I feel like they would have been a prime candidate for it. Right now, BTS. I would love a BTS either
Honestly, yeah.
mini series or movie because I feel like that's an easier way to get to know the members as well and their personalities, obviously in like a heightened reality.
Yeah,
But
no,
then
yeah.
also you get to listen to their music. And I feel like they're just they're the big like global band right now that I feel like that would just be so fun to watch.
Yeah, if there's anyone like the Beatles right now, it's them for sure. I have a pitch. The BTS, where the movie follows them going through like basic training in the Korean army when they have
Honestly,
to do that with their
that's
songs.
a pretty good idea.
Right? That sounds, I support it. That sounds awesome to me, honestly. I would watch that and I'm not a fan. Like I haven't listened to their stuff. So
Yeah, I just feel like this is such an underrated style of movie and an underrated crossover. Obviously, it takes a big artist to do this, or in the case of Big Time Rush, it takes a person who has a vision to create a band out of thin air, essentially. And in that case, it worked because the music was good and the show was funny. And even if it hasn't aged like amazingly because it's like kid humor as well, it's still like there's a level of competency exhibited throughout the entirety of it that it's just like this is just fun. It's enjoyable to watch, enjoyable to experience, and then you get the music in every episode or in every film or whatever, in every sequence. I would love more stuff like this, especially with other artists. And if you have to create a band, the Monkees, Big Time Rush, do it. Like this is such an underrated, untapped market.
I think that's such a great way of like raising the awareness of a band, if anything. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to add. Like it's just fun. And that's just that's the whole point.
Exactly. What else can you say about it? It's really short as well, which benefits it,
which
you know,
is good. Yeah. If it was any longer, that would start to be detrimental.
I mean, I think we've reached the end, and I would venture to say that this is a very successful episode and a very good pairing. I wonder how we came up with it.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
But since we're at the end, I have to remind you to support the show on Spotify and Apple. Leave us a review, leave us a comment, leave us a rating. Tell your friends and family. Tell your enemies and anyone who survived the British invasion of the United States.
And I am going back to this. If you want to tell us who the sexiest Beatle is in your opinion and why it is in fact George Harrison or Paul McCartney
Or Ringo.
or Ringo, hey, that nose can do things. But maybe don't go to John because he was misogynist. Anyways, you can email us at upcpod@gmail.com. I highly recommend that you follow our Linktree, which has our letterbox pages, our music pages, our TikTok page, and our YouTube page. In case you want to keep up to date with all of our scores and all of the extra content that we are releasing for you guys on TikTok and on YouTube, I highly recommend. If you want to see what next week's episode is, then I highly recommend that you go over and check our Instagram page, which is, again, in our link tree, because we are going to be talking about a lot of romance next episode. So I highly recommend you check in.
And not only romance, another huge artist that, you know what, might be on the level of the Beatles. So on that note, we'll see you next week.
Bye.